Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online guide video with me, Sherman. Wow, I almost got screwed up there. But today, guys, we're going to be talking about sets and how you can use them in combination with each other to give you the, I would say, better results than what you could get from other types of setups. A lot of times people use sets in odd combinations, is what I like to say, and they can work, but a lot of times they work to do what needs to be done, but at the same time they don't give you the same results as you can get from other set combinations. So but let's go ahead and talk a few things first before we get started. Please understand this video comes from the roleplay, casual play perspective, not from meta perspective. This is a more of a guide towards that kind of play style, because a lot of people ask me all the time, and before I even get into this, I'm going to answer a few questions. A lot of people ask me all the time, Sherman, how do you know these sets work this way? How do you know their combination is better this way than doing this and this, or using these and these? I don't until I test. A lot of times you can't really see how something's going to work until you actually physically utilize how it's going to work. So a lot of times it's a lot of testing, a lot of trial and error is what I like to say. I mean, it's true. You got to go through a lot of trial and error, looking at sets, putting sets in combination with other sets, trying different things to see what works best. So when it comes to sets, we are on PTS here. I'm going to show you guys some sets. Now, there's something I like to call a prime set, and then I call a secondary set, and then of course we have our monster set, and then if you want your ability altering weapons or agility, jewelry, that kind of thing, we're going to get into that stuff. But for now, let's talk about the basics, and that is this how you combo sets to work in such a way that it gives you the greatest advantage. Right now I'm on the Plague Slinger build I made, or Plague Singer build, and as you guys can see, a lot of people will say it's not the best setup. Again, it comes back to personal preference and preference of play. How much survivability do you want? How much different kind of things do you want in your character for what content you're doing? So, going back over here now to the sets and looking at stuff, the set I have on this build is Reliquin. Now, Reliquin has also a perfected version, but we're going to talk about the 5-piece benefits of the base version versus the perfected, because perfected means you have to run the dungeon on veteran mode or hard mode to get the perfected gear. So you have to run it on a more difficult level to get the better equipment. So a lot of people will not have perfected until they have like a baseline set. So like this set they'll have first before they get the perfected set a lot of the times, because you can get this in normal. And getting this in normal is really easy because you just play the normal like trial. And if this drops, there's 12 people it's going to, have a chance to drop for, and you're going to be able to get one of these pieces. Not always in the right traits, but it and that's the other thing that a lot of people I talk to about is people say, well, how do you know like what traits you should use, what traits you shouldn't use? Again, it comes down to personal preference, and also besides personal preference, it comes down to your knowledge of the game and your skill level. Some of us don't have the skill level of others, so having builds that play into our strengths and weaknesses is also a thing you want to look at. And sets can do this. So for the Plague Slinger or Plague Singer, I'm using Veladrits, I'm using Reliquin, and I'm using Swamp Raiders. Now, this combination, normally a lot of people would look at this and say, man, Swamp Raiders is a good set, but it really doesn't benefit you. But on the Necromancer, it does. It benefits you really well. The only other class that it can benefit really well on is the Dragon Knight and the Nightblade to some degree, but playing the Nightblade with a lot of disease damage is not easy, because they've only got like 2 abilities or 3 abilities that are disease based. The rest of them are physical damage based, and it can get really confusing. So let's go ahead and get on to sets and what sets that you should use as a prime set, what sets you should use as your secondary set, and then what you should use for a monster set. And this is not a guide that's going to tell you what's going to be best. This is a guide to tell you what works in combination with other sets and how you can use them in conjunction with each other. So one of the things I always do when I'm working on a build is I find a prime set. That's the first thing I do. If I'm playing a tank, I find a tank prime set, which is usually something like Eben, Plague Doctors, Thunderbug, Meridia's Guardian or Meridia's Light. These are heavy armor sets or gear sets that give you things that are more geared towards a tank as a primary, and then I'll look for a secondary set, which is something that I like to say complements the build. So when it comes to like this, like the Plague Slinger, you guys can see I took 2 sets that work in conjunction with each other, and one complements the other one in a certain way. So the way that I look at sets is you've got to look at how much crit do I want to have on my character, and how am I going to get there. Now, in this case, I am using the Lover Mundus Stone, so I only have like a 50-something% crit when I'm fully buffed up with potions. As you can see, I am 52% crit, but when I'm with a group, I go to almost a 60-something percent crit, which I'm going to show real quick, because all I have to do is hit this once. So, within a group, I'm going to go to almost a 60% crit with a 4k weapon damage, and that's pretty much fully buffed, which isn't bad. That's a really good amount to have, because the way I do a lot of builds is if I'm playing a stamina DPS, I look at my weapon damage, my crit, and my max stat. So I look at my damage, weapon or spell, my spell or weapon crit, or magicka stamina, depending on which route I'm going. And I always try to build for what's going to be beneficial, the most beneficial for that build I'm playing. So in this case, stamina, you want to make sure that you have at least a 40+% crit chance. And this is so you get that higher crit chance to benefit you and your plate, you're playing into that. The weapon damage, now most of the time what I try to do is for a damage dealer is I try to build with a 3000 weapon damage in mind baseline, or 3200 is what I like to say, because I do what's called 20-32 in my builds. So I build most of my stuff to have a 20k health, 32k or stam or magicka, unless I'm playing a tank, and then I build 32k health with 20k magic or stamina, depending on what kind of tank I'm playing, whether it's a magicka tank or a stamina tank. And if I'm playing more of a hybrid type tank, I go for 20 into both. But the thing is that to get these kind of combinations that work really well, to where you're going to get a good enough amount of crit, weapon damage, and all this stuff, to where it plays into your character more, is the harder part for most people. As you can see, my base weapon damage unbuffed is 3000. So I always try to build for about a 3000 weapon damage on any stamina DPS. Get him as close to 3200 as possible, if not more. So, yeah. But let's talk about how you take what kind of sets can you use as a prime set on a stamina DPS alone. So we have Reliquins. This is a set more of an in-game trial set. So you're not going to have this set. This doesn't drop in Overland. This doesn't drop in at a world boss. This drops in a trial, which requires you to have a other sets to get this set. So you kind of have to do this whole gear progression thing in this game that a lot of people don't realize, or they don't understand how to get. So there's different sets you can get in the game. So first off, there is overland sets, there is dungeon sets, and there is trial sets. Now, and crafted sets. So overland sets are usually going to be the easier type of set to get because they drop in the overland. Now, the one thing I always tell people is don't take sets like Sword Singers and Spriggans and put it together and expect to have a perfect, stamina DPS build. You're going to have a decent stamina DPS build, but they don't work in combination with each other. In the sense of the game's structure of gear and stuff like that. It works, and it does a fine job, but you have to use the Thief Mundustone to get the higher crit chance. So it's like you're making a trade here that it might not be a wise one. Now, using, say, Sword Singer with Reliquin would be a good option if you're using primarily two-handed weapons on both bars. Then you can do it, and your DPS is going to be, I'm not going to say great, but it will be better than it could be if you were using something else that wasn't built to benefit the two-handed abilities. So the thing about Sword Singers is it applies to two-handed. So you have to, your primary weapon of choice is going to be two-handed with that, and your off weapon might be a bow or another two-handed, but you're not going to want to use something like this and use a bow on the front bar and a bow on the back bar because you're not going to get any benefit out of it. So, kind of sucks. But there are sets very similar to what we're already using, Reliquin. So, Defiler is one of them. As you can see, it adds 2-piece weapon damage, 3-piece weapon crit, 4-piece weapon crit, and then it has this 5-piece bonus. When you deal critical damage, you have an 8% chance to summon a Hunger that spews poison damage on all enemies in front of it, dealing X amount of poison damage and stunning any enemy hit for 5 seconds. This effect can occur once every 5 seconds. So, sets like this are fine to start with to help you get into other sets. So what I like to refer to these as starter sets or basic sets to help you get started into the climb for gear progression. And that's because this drops in overland. You can get this really easy. There's other sets too like it. There is trying to remember, it's another one. Briarheart is another one. Very similar. As you can see, the 2 and 4 piece are weapon crit. The 3rd piece, instead of being weapon damage, it is a max stamina. Now, if you take weapon damage, 129 weapon damage, and you compare it to 1096 stamina, like if you just put this set on only and went and parsed on a dummy, the damage for just those benefits, just the 2 to 4 piece benefits, are very similar in their damage capabilities. They're off by 100 or so points in damage, but that's about it. But when you add in that 5-piece bonus, that's where things change. Because now this one, when you deal critical damage, you have a 10% chance to increase your weapon damage by 449 for 10 seconds. This effect is active. While this effect is active, your critical strikes heal you, and this can happen every 15 seconds. Now, that means you will have basically 5 seconds in between activation where you won't have that 449 weapon damage. So it actually plays into your character's strengths and weaknesses. So you really have to pay attention to some of that stuff. And there are other sets too that work in combination. Like Griffin's Ferocity is another one that you can get. It's like these are overland sets, and they're usually fairly cheap, except for Briarhearts. A lot of people use that in PvP now, or have for a long time. But Briarhearts, Griffin's Ferocity, and the other one are all really good starter base sets. Now there is another set you can, another couple sets you can get, but these require crafting, and they require you to have 6 traits. So one of the sets is called Hunting's Rage. Again, it has the 2 and 4 piece weapon crit. The third piece, max stamina. 5 piece is weapon damage. It's that 2 to 4 piece benefit that we're primarily looking at. Now, if you look at Reliquin, the 2 to 4 piece benefit, it has 2 piece weapon crit, 4 piece weapon crit, and then the third piece is Minor Slayer. Minor Slayer increases your damage against dungeon and trial mobs by 5%. Do you think that 1096 stamina increases your damage by 5%? It's like 2.1% increase in damage. That's it. And then the 129 weapon damage is about the same. Now, the perfected Reliquin will come with extra max stamina on it. These are prime sets for stamina DPS, though. All these sets I'm showing you, these are prime sets. These are sets that you're going to put on your main body. So these are things that give you a lot more crit and stuff. Now, you can take 2 sets like this and put them in combination. Like, you can take Hunting's Rage and Reliquin and put them together. They work fine. They give you a lot more crit and stuff. But there's advantage and disadvantage to this. Because the advantage is that with Hunting's Rage, you're getting the 2 crit, you're getting the stamina, you're getting that high weapon damage. The benefit of using Reliquin is you're getting that 5-piece benefit of that, light and heavy attacks stack harmful wind, which does damage every second, and it can do a maximum of 20 stacks. So Reliquin is really good in combination with it, but you have to use Reliquin on the body and Hunting's crafted. And that's where things can get complicated for some people, because of the fact that crafting jewelry is not the easiest thing. Unless you're super rich, it's not. So there's a reason why I do a lot of these builds where I show people like, oh, take a set like Hunting's Rage or Reliquin or whatever and put it in combination with something like Swamp Raiders. Now let's talk about the secondary sets. So when it comes to secondary sets, there's a lot. In fact, there's probably more secondary sets than there is primary sets. And the reason for that is because this gives you a lot of different variety to choose from in how to combo sets together. So Sword Singers, Swamp Raiders, these are what I call secondary sets. And I call them this, not the devs, myself. And that's because of what they do. As you can see, Sword Singers, 2-piece adds max stamina, 3-piece adds some weapon damage, 4-piece adds weapon critical, and then the 5-piece adds 450 weapon damage to your 2-handed abilities only. When you look at something like this thing does the same thing. Weapon crit, weapon damage, and max stamina on the 2 to 4 piece. It's just in a different order from what I just showed you with Sword Singers. The 5-piece bonus adds 400 in weapon damage to my poison and disease damage abilities. Me using a lot more disease damage abilities, this really plays well into that. That's why I said, like, some builds, some classes work better with other sets. For example, sorcerers work better with Sword Singer because they're going to use more weapon abilities on their bar from the 2-handed line than any other class, because they don't have a lot of stamina based abilities. So when you use something like Sword Singers with them, they are going to get that 400 extra weapon damage with 2-handed on the front bar. When you swap to the back bar, you're going to get the benefits of whatever you have on the back bar, a bow or whatever, type of weapon. But that's my point, is you get these different sets that work really good in combination with each other. Now, there are dungeon sets, and again, dungeon sets, there's a lot of them that work very similar to the ones I just showed you, the prime sets. So prime sets from dungeons are things like Two Throw is a prime set, and it's a really good prime set in my opinion. Then there's Leviathan, it's another good prime set. I like to use something like Two Throw with like Strength of the Automaton. And the reason for that is because Strength of the Automaton adds 400 weapon damage to your physical damage abilities. Now, to be honest, this works way better on a sorcerer running this with Hunting's Rage. And that's because all two-handed abilities do physical damage. Most bow stuff does poison damage or something, but you have endless hail, which is physical damage. So, and then if you're using caltrops or using the trap beast, those do physical damage. So that damage is amplified by 400. That's why Strength of the Automatons works so well on a sorcerer versus most other classes. Most other classes aren't using a lot of physical damage stuff unless you're playing a warden. So, but there's a lot of different things, like you said, Leviathan. Then there's like things like hulking Draugr. A lot of people are like, oh, that's just a lot of stamina. Yeah, you put this on a character that has not the greatest amount of stamina pool, like say an Argonian. Put this on there, on the jewelry, and then put Hunting's Rage on there, and then on their jewelry itself, do 2 weapon damage and then a stamina recovery, and you're going to have a pretty powerful Argonian stamina DPS, because this is going to give you a ton of stamina. So that's the way you got to look at the what I call the pros and cons of a build. Depending on what race you play, some races are going to have greater benefits for playing stamina versus other races, because there's magic races, and then there's stamina races, and then there's hybrid races. So looking at the different sets, using the right combination is always going to be best. So that's why I do the prime and secondary sets. Like Sword Dancers is a great secondary set because it's very much similar to Sword Singer, but this one works with dual wield instead of two-handed. Now, if we were using Sword Dancers with, say, Reliquin on a sorcerer, that's a good combination if you're focusing on primary dual wield damage. If you're focusing primarily on getting the most damage possible, Strength of the Automaton is better, but you can still use this. And then going on to other sets like Barkskin, people have asked me, why is Barkskin a medium armor set when it works? It gives you this physical resistance and reduces the duration of immobilize and snares and all this kind of stuff. And then people say, oh, well, that's a PvP set. Barkskin's not a PvP set or a PvE set. It's both. It's a universal set. Most sets are. But this set works really good in PvE or PvP because it gives you that stamina recovery and it gives you that reduced snare effect and everything, and then you recover health and stamina. But this is actually geared towards a tank in medium armor, not a tank in heavy armor. Because of the fact that it gives the max health, the stamina recovery, the physical resistance, and stuff. When you're playing a medium armor tank, you got to build for good recovery. So, that's a way to do that. Not all sets, though, are going to work in perfect combination with each other. So, like Viper's Sting is a really good set that I like to use sometimes on Dragon Knights, primarily because it does that poison damage, but I also found that it works really good now with Necro, because Necro gets that, is built to do poison disease damage. So you can put Viper's Sting with Swamp Raiders, and you get a really good combination. It's not the best combination. It's not nowhere near Reliquin, but it is still, like, within margin of Reliquin. We're talking, like, maybe 2 to 5k difference in damage, because of the way they proc damage and stuff. So, then there's things like, Storm Masters is another one I like to use for sorcerers, because they get 5% increase in shock damage because of their class. So this is a really good one to use on a sorcerer. And you can use this as a prime or secondary set because of the way that you can get it. You can either get it for the body or you can get it for the jewelry and weapons. So like using Storm Masters with Reliquins is actually really good. You heavy attack when you do your first attack for 20 seconds, you're doing your light weave. After 20 seconds, when you see this buff come off, heavy attack again. Yes, you're going to have to throw a heavy attack every, like say 18 seconds. But I would much rather throw in a heavy attack every 18 seconds so I can get an extra almost 1600 shock damage added to my other damage plus the Reliquin. Like, that's actually pretty good. And then there's other things here, like I said, that work out. There's Blood Drinker. This is a really good one for bleed builds. There is the, I can't remember the other one. Blood Moon, I think it is. Yeah, Blood Moon. And then I think Savage Werewolf, no. Zogvin's Warband. Scavenging Demise, and that's pretty much it. So there is, like I said, there's always going to be more secondary sets than there is prime sets. Always. And the reason for that is so this way you have options in your prime sets that don't line up with your secondary sets, so you have more variety there. You have more options, you have more choices in ways that you can combo gear. But you could even use something like Scavenging Demise with Reliquin and make a decent build. And it's not going to be, again, this isn't to tell you guys how to make builds or how to take sets and use them to their highest potential. It's showing you how you can take sets and use them in combination with each other on builds that complement each other. Now, another thing I get asked quite a bit is, when I do tank builds, why do I use sets like, why do I use one of these, what I would use as a prime set, for example, like Leviathan, on a tank? Well, a tank's job isn't just to stand there and hold block, okay? A tank, to me, also plays other content besides tank. When you play open world, you want something that's going to help with your damage situation. So I like to use sets that complement that playstyle. So sometimes I might use something like Knights Errant, which, if you guys don't know what Knights Errant is, it's a heavy armor dungeon set that gives you max health, stamina, weapon damage on the 2 to 4 piece. The 5 piece adds 200 weapon damage to your one-handed sword and shield abilities, and then when you use a one-handed sword and shield, you heal, a one-handed sword and shield ability, you heal for 1375. On a tank, a starter tank, somebody who's learning the ropes of tanking, this is a great combination to use with something like Hunting's Rage. Excuse me. Because Hunting's Rage is going to give you that extra weapon damage, the weapon crit, and that max stamina, which plays into your ability to tank with sword and shield, because you're going to have a better resource pool for stamina. You're going to have less health, but you can use health and chance to help boost your health. So there's a lot of different combinations here that you can use to do that. But the reason for these set combinations like this to give you is so this way you have your primary set, tank set, for example, Knights Errant is your primary set, Hunting's Rage is going to be your secondary set. So you're going to use this not on the body like you do with the DPS. You're going to actually use this on the jewelry and weapons and still use, like, Hunting's Rage, whatever, even if you were doing Reliquin, then I would suggest using this on your body and putting Reliquin in the jewelry and everything. But you can do that, and you can still play a tank that way. Is it the most effective tank? No. But it's a tank that'll get you through content and help you understand how the game works. And this is where a lot of people say that a lot of my content's misleading because I'm not showing them how to play the most effective tank in the game. Well, that is and I hate to say it this way, but that is a matter of interpretation. Okay? Some people might find the meta tank better because it offers all these different benefits and stuff to the group. But all these benefits and stuff they're offering to the group, which is funny, is mostly set benefits. Ebon Armor, does the tank have to wear it? No, a healer can wear it. Guess who else? Stamina DPS could wear it if they wanted to. Yeah, they can. Before you say no they can't, yes they can. Anyone can wear that set. It is designed to be more catered towards a tank, but it can still work on anybody because it's not restricted to one specific role. On the set itself, it does not state it's tank only. It's just like Alkosh. Doesn't say it's tank only. In fact, Alkosh is a medium armor trial set, which a lot of people are kind of wonder, why am I using a medium armor set to offer my group this benefit? Wouldn't this work better? And I've had this argument with people many a times. Wouldn't this work better on a medium armor DPS? The reality of it is it works either way. It'll work on a medium armor DPS, or it'll work on a tank. It can even work on a stamina healer if you really wanted to. Because the stamina healers are going to be up front anyways most of the time, because of the fact that most of their heals work better up close. And it's primarily a warden, so it primarily works up close. So having a set like Alkosh and having the other healer feed you resources or synergies, or you're synergizing off of somebody else's abilities, gives you this access to this ability that is going to work better actually for you, because you're more of a stamina based build anyways. So you're going to have higher physical damage, you're going to have higher like from your champion points, and you're going to do more damage with that proc, plus you're going to put that 3010 physical and spell resist on the enemy. And so there's a lot of things that you really have to look at when it comes to sets and how they work in combination with each other. But that's why I use the, like, if you ever look at my builds, there's a reason why I make a lot of my builds very, what I call a universal build. And it's not really a universal build, it's a build that's just it has a prime set, it has a secondary set, and then a monster set. And most of the time monster sets is another problem that a lot of people have, picking a monster set that fits with their character. Monster sets are pretty much built and designed to work with one type of person. Grotars is more of a Magicka set, Chokethorns is more of a healer set, Iceheart is kind of a Magicka set. It can work for tanks and for DPS, which is kind of cool. Then you have Infernal Guardian, which is a really good Magicka set. Krogs is definitely a Stam DPS set. Alambris is a great Magicka DPS set. And even some of these sets, like I will use like Alambris on some stamina DPS builds, especially if I'm playing something like the Tempest Barbarian. I might use Alambris on it, because I'll be dealing a lot of shock damage. So it'll have a greater chance of proccing Alambris, or proccing something like, say, Stormfist, which is a more of a stamina-based set. But this is also one that is really cool because it has stam recovery built into it. So what you can do, instead of using a stam recovery on your jewelry, you can use another weapon damage. And you can use this in combination with that, and there's just so many different things you can do with builds that allow you to kind of tinker with other things like traits, enchants, and stuff on your gear, so you don't have to have other things. Like with this one, because I'm using Veladris, which gives me an extra 129 weapon damage, on here I put recovery, and that's so I can get higher recovery, so I have better sustainability. And then I also get asked a lot of times, why do you make your builds like this? Why do you do tri-stats on the head, chest, legs, and then tri-rune on the 2 jewelry pieces, and then like bloodthirsty here on a stamina DPS? This is what I like to call is a pretty much like a basic build or a beginner's build for somebody at the end game. If you're playing into in-game trials and you are an inexperienced player in trials, it's better to have a build like this that's well-rounded and offers you a lot more in your tool set for stats and in other things. Not only does it give you higher health, it gives you higher, stamina and magicka, so you can use those abilities to your advantage. Let's say you're a new player learning trials. Are you going to go in with a purely DPS type setup if you're inexperienced and you know you're going to die? Probably not. So going with something like Bone Tyrant, Beckoning Armor, would be really good, because now you have a resistance buff you can cast on yourself that costs, guess what, Magicka. And this resistance is going to keep you alive and make it better for you to understand the mechanics of that dungeon or trial and help you learn them. This is great even for progressive groups, to allow their players some breathing room till they become more experienced with playing the content. Once you become experienced with playing content and you become comfortable with playing content, that's when you can start changing the build to more of a meta setup, is what I like to say. You can go from the Trirune rings to pure stamina rings, and then have just 1 health enchant on your body, so you get like 17k health. But I don't like to start that way. I like to start with something like this where I have that, I like to say, a little bit of cushion for survivability and stuff, and that's another reason why I build with high resistances, is so this way I have that greater survivability, those greater tools to learn the end game content. And it's not just like, and I play this way all the time too, because having a disadvantage of or a disability that creates a disadvantage for you to play can also require you to play a certain way or to sacrifice a certain stuff so you have greater ability to play. So in my case, my trimmers, which I'm trying to show you guys, as you guys can see there, that's what it would look like if I wasn't stabilizing my hand, okay? So just imagine you're playing the game and it's like this. Could you do that? Probably not. So I have to stabilize my hand so I can play the game. So I actually rest my wrist like on my desk ledge, and then that way I put a little pressure on it so it holds my hand still, so I can actually grip my mouse and move around. I still get a few what I call shocks, where I'll just do that, and it can be really annoying, and it can get me killed. But if I'm playing in a trial with a really experienced group, am I going to go in there with a build that is, you know, super glassy and can get me killed in one hit if I make a jerk? You know, if I have a shock a moment or whatever? No. I need something that's going to get me through the content and allow me to play the content with this group who's helping me experience that content. And this is, I think this is a not a large misconception, but it's for greater understanding that there are people out there that have other things too. There's people out there that are missing hands or missing fingers, or, you know, I know a person that's considered legally blind, and they wear these really wonky looking glasses. They don't like them, so but they're considered legally blind, but they still play the game, and they do trials, and, you know, they're not in a hardcore group, but they still do trials. And I think that's kind of the thing, is a lot of people don't understand, is there's a lot of people out there that just don't have the capability or the skill, if you will, to play at the level of some meta players. And so having builds like this really helps show them that, hey, there's other options that you can use to play the game and to enjoy the game. Let's say you don't even do trials. Do you need trial sets to play dungeons? No. So you can use pretty much any set that drops in dungeons, overland, or is crafted that's a primary set for your stamina DPS, magicka DPS. And when it comes to magicka, there's several different sets as well that are primary sets, and there's some that are really good. Like, in my opinion, Combat Physician is great on a healer. You know, because it gives them that ability to have extra magicka, 2 things, a spell crit, and then when you critically heal somebody, you're going to give them a damage shield. To me, that works out really well. So you can have one healer running that, while another healer's running Reliquin and Wise Mage. And then the one that's running the Combat Physician, they could run Jorvolds. So this way their Warhorn times are up better, and you get this better, like, synergization between the two healers in your group. And that's my opinion. That would be a good group dynamic setup. But I think I would probably go the other way around. Jorvolds with Wise Mage, and then because of the way Jorvolds works, if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, these are other sets that drop in the game. This is a light armor set, Jorvolds is, and these are both dungeon sets. So Combat Physician is an overlooked set, but like I said, it does the max magicka, 2 spell crit, and then the 5-piece. When you critically heal an ally, yourself or an ally, you grant the target a damage shield that absorbs X amount of damage for 6 seconds, and it can happen every 6 seconds. How often are you going to critically heal when you have 2 things of spell crit on a healer in light armor? All the time. And then when you take in something into account like Jorvold's guidance, this one gives you two things: a mag recovery, healing done, and then the increased duration to all of your major buffs, minor buffs, and damage shields you apply to yourself and allies. So this with combat physician is actually really good. And then when you use this in combination with other skills, this is a great like training set for a healer learning how to do trials or learning how to do dungeons. Like, help them get this Jorvold's guidance, help them get that combat physician, and then say, here, this is going to help you get started to be a better healer, because it's going to show you, like, hey, if I'm critically healing my group, they're going to get these benefits. And then what you tell them to do is, instead of putting into mag recovery on their jewelry, tell them to put all spell damage. So this way their character can play in overland doing story quests and stuff, and they're not going to feel like they're sludging through the content. They're actually going to feel like they actually can do the content at a reasonable pace. On top of that, that higher spell damage and stuff is going to play better into their character also when it comes to healing. So you get that high healing crit capability, you get that high spell damage, you get spell penetration, and then on top of that, you're getting that Jorvold's guidance, which is increasing all major buffs, minor buffs, and damage shields, and it gives you two things of recovery. So that's things that you can look at when it comes to playing different builds, utilizing sets that are going to give you an advantage to your group that is learning how to do not only 4-man group content, but also 5-man or 12-man group content when it comes to trials. This way you have good, basically, cushion, if you will, for progressing yourself into becoming a better player. Eventually you're going to get to the point where you won't need combat physician on your healer anymore, because yeah, you get that extra damage shield every so often on your people, and that comes in handy. But at the same time, you can do that with other skills. If you're a Dragon Knight healer, you can throw up your class shield. This is going to apply a damage shield to multiple people. If you're not, you can use the Resto Staff ability to give a shield to people with Ward Ally or Healing Ward. There's a lot of different things that you can use, other abilities, but you can use those abilities in combination with that too. So it's interesting to see like how many different tools there are in the game that offer so many different ways to play and utilize sets in really great ways. Tanking is another one that I'm not going to talk about like using Reliquant on tanking. I'm going to talk about actual sets that you can use. So like when you look at heavy dungeon sets, a lot of people will say a lot of these sets are really bad, like Medusa's. Oh, that's a really bad set. And it's actually a really good set if you're playing a heavy armor, high crit chance based Magicka person. I like to use this on an off tank Magicka tank. So like if I was playing, say, a DK off tank that is a Magicka based person, I would like to use this set in combination with like Julianus crafted, and then Grothdars as my monster set, because I'm going to be up close anyways. I'm going to be dealing a lot of fire damage anyways. And while I'm dealing this damage, when I'm not tanking, because I'm not tanking all the time, even in trials, I'm tanking, but I'm also bringing other things to the group. So this way I can bring a lot more fire damage, and then I get that minor force on top of it, which can really help me out, because I don't have to cast, Trap Beast or something. I can actually just use this and get that greater benefit. Then you could look at other sets in here too, like Tormentor. This is another set that people don't realize. This is how you can get another taunt. When you deal damage with a charge ability, you gain extra physical and spell resist, and taunt the enemy to attack you for 15 seconds. So you don't even need to use Puncture or one of those abilities. You just need a charge ability. Well, there's a lot of charge abilities in the game. There is a charge ability actually on the werewolf, but I've got to test that still. Some people say it doesn't do the taunt. Some people say it does. I'm going to actually test this and find out, because if it does, I will release a werewolf tank. That'll use sword and shield on its main bar, because then you have the shield charge you can use. On the back bar, it's going to use a two-handed. It's going to have another stampede there, and then it's going to, it's going to have 3 different charges that it can use to tank with, and including its own leap attack. But yeah, like tanks, there's a lot of different options here that you can use, and it's not just heavy armor. Because a lot of these sets that are heavy armor, you can also use for damage dealing. Like Druid Kingslayer, you put this on a heavy armor damage dealer, it's really powerful. Because you get major brutality all the time, and that minor endurance. So you get major brutality, increasing your weapon damage by 20%. You get 2 things of weapon damage. If you take 2 of your jewelry pieces and make them weapon damage, and then your necklace infused with stam recovery on a heavy armor DPS, this is a great set. Nightmares is another really good set for what I like to say is this set was made for two-handed tanking, because it's a way to put Minor Slayer on multiple enemies around you whenever you deal melee damage. Jolting Arms is another really good one for more shock-based or lightning-based, so I like to use this on sword magic tanks. And then things like Mafala, this is a decent one. If you, like you said, some of these sets, you have to look how they work to take advantage of them. So, but a lot of these sets aren't just, like you said, a lot of them are tank related, and some of them aren't. Most of the newer sets are tank related, where you have some of the older sets that aren't so tank related. Like, trying to think of a few here. Yeah, like Sergeant's Mail. This is, you could go either way with this. You could say it's more for a damage dealer, it's more for a tank, or whatever. But it's actually kind of a mixed bag there. But it's a really good one if you know how to use it. And that's, again, brings me back full circle to this whole thing. When you make a character in this game, you want to know, okay, if I want to play a DPS, I need a primary set that's going to be really good for me. I need a secondary set that's going to be really good for me, that's going to give me really good DPS capabilities. When I play a tank, I need something that's going to make me a better tank, but also a better, give me the option of doing damage. So you want that nice flow of stuff, because from 1 to 50, what are you doing? You're leveling. And on a tank, if you're leveling, and let's say even after you get to 50 and you get to CP 160, you're still going to be doing stuff to gain experience. So it's still better to use a set that has DPS orientation to it, unless you're just focusing on playing end game. Like if you play a tank and all you focus on is doing trials, then playing to the meta might be better for you. Or you might just stick with what you got and say, you know what, I like playing this way, so I'm going to play this way. And if we need those other sets, I can always carry them with me and use them in combination with what I already have. Because you can still set up a tank in Reliquin and Hunting's Rage. Or not Reliquin and Hunting's Rage, Alkosh and Hunting's Rage. So. But that's pretty much it for this set topic, guys. I will be doing some more videos on this. I'm going to break it down into roles, probably. But I wanted to see how this does with you guys and see what you guys think of it. If you guys enjoyed this kind of conversation where I talk to you guys about the different sets and how you can use them in combination with each other, I might actually bring in some other stuff from some other areas that you guys might find interesting. So. But I want to see how these videos do. That's why I did the one about the hybrids and about like how to make your own build. And I'm showing you guys sets and how you can combo things, because I want you guys to be able to play the kind of character you want to play. And that's why I say this is more dedicated to roleplay casual than it is towards meta players. Because roleplay casual players aren't going to play to the meta. They're going to play the rest of the game, and most of them aren't going to be using trial sets. And if they are, they're using the basic trial sets. They're using imperfect stuff. They're not going to be using perfected stuff unless they become a hardcore trial player. So, Not saying that role players and casual players aren't going to be hardcore into the in-game. They can, but most of them will have characters like this where they just play the game and have fun with them, and yeah. But that's pretty much it for the video, guys. Hope you guys liked it. If you did, you guys know what's coming next. If you like this video, hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.